fight tonight.
What's going on, everyone? In this video, we'll go over the last boss mechanics in Veteran Kind's Aegis hard mode. There's a lot of information we need to cover, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. The main boss is Lord Falgraven. He has about 137 million health on non-hard mode and 276 million health on hard mode. Lord Falgraven has 3 phases to the fight. He has about 7 adds that he spawns to help him throughout all 3 phases. On the first phase of the fight, Lord Falgraven spawns 1 mini Lieutenant Nordal almost immediately after starting the fight. The lieutenant has about 28 million health on non-hard mode and 56 million on hard mode. On phase 2, he spawns 3 adds, the Crimson, the Blood Knight, and the Bitter Knight. The Crimson and the Blood Knight have 10 million health on non-hard mode, and the Bitter Knight has about 6 million. The Crimson and the Blood Knight on hard mode, they have about 13 million health, as where the Bitter Knight has about 8 million. On the third phase of the fight, he will spawn 2 Torturers that have 500k on non-hard mode and about 1 million on hard mode. Now let's talk about each add and what they do on hard mode. Remember that I solo tank this fight as well, so the view may be a little different than what you're going into. I'm pretty sure most people still tank this with, or still have 2 tanks in this fight, so I will be describing the mechanics as if there were 2 tanks. The first mini we'll talk about is Lieutenant Nordal, who the off tank will grab and will normally move him away from the main boss. The main boss will normally be in the center of the room, as where Lieutenant Nordal will be closer to the wall. He has a few mechanics that everyone needs to watch out for. So the first mechanic we'll talk about is the heavy attack he does. This mechanic looks just like the uppercut ability. It takes about 3 seconds to charge up. The tank should be able to just hold block and take this hit, but if you're a little bit too hesitant to do that, just dodge roll it. There's no harm in not taking damage. The next attack he will do is a cone attack called Blood Cleave. Now this attack takes about 5 seconds to charge up, and what you want to do is face this away from the group so that it will not kill the DPS and healers. The cleave is about 7 to 8 meters long. You can dodge this attack. The DPS and healers can dodge it as well, which is highly recommended if the cleave faces the group. If you don't dodge this attack, you will get roughly a 20-second to 15-second bleed on you. And then if it does hit the DPS and healers, it will one-shot them. Next, what he'll do is a mechanic I like to call hands, which is where he takes a knee and slams his sword in the ground. And small hand-like fists will pop up underneath every player after a few seconds. The hands will spawn roughly 6 to 7 times. You will see a bloody pool underneath your feet. Just stay moving in a small area and you'll be fine. The more hands you get hit by, the higher the damage. The next mechanic he will do is raise his hand in the air with his sword and teleport strike to about 6 players. This looks just like the last boss in Spindle Clutch 2, so you may have seen this mechanic once or twice. You can just call teleport and the DPS can block cancel their abilities if they have a full stack of Thracians up. The last mechanic we need to discuss is his chain attack. If you dodge roll too far away from Nordal, or you just get too far from him, what he'll do is he'll chain you, disabling you because you can't break free from it, and then he'll proceed to uppercut you shortly after. So stay very close to him and keep him facing away from the group. The next set of adds we'll discuss are the Knights on phase 2 of the fight. The Crimson, Bitter, and Blood Knight. It's best to have one tank grab the Crimson and Bitter Knight and the other tank to grab the Blood Knight, and I'll explain a little later on. Let's talk about the Crimson Knight first, which I suggest you guys focus down first. The Crimson Knight will heavy attack you, and you should be able to hold block through it. If you're too scared to hold block, just dodge roll, and there's no shame in that. And then he'll do like an enrage mechanic where he'll grow larger in size. That's pretty much all he does. Next, we have the Bitter Knight. What he will do is turn to a random player and cast a cage or sphere like bubble on a player. This will disable that player, and you will need to kill that cage around the player, or they'll die in about 8 to 10 seconds. The cage has about 862k health on hard mode, and I'm kind of unaware of how much it has on non-hard mode. It will obviously be less, and probably around 300 to 500k, if that. The next ad is the Blood Knight. Now, the Blood Knight will do one special mechanic that everyone needs to watch out for. What he will do is spawn a line from where he is standing in a cross pattern. A line going in front, backwards, left, and right of which way the Blood Knight is facing. The best position for DPS and healers are at an angle, basically on the hind leg of the Blood Knight. Never stand directly in front, behind, or to the left or right of the Blood Knight, as the line will hit you. Now, once one of these knights die, the other two will absorb that knight's power. So, if the Crimson Knight dies first, which that's the one that enrages, the Bitter Knight and the Blood Knight will now gain that enrage mechanic and will grow larger in size. Now, after you kill all 3 knights, the boss will fly down and the next phase of the fight will begin. During this next fight, the ghosts of the Bitter, Crimson, and Blood Knight will randomly spawn in different locations and do their own unique mechanic. So the Crimson Knight will spawn in a ghost form and then enrage the main boss. The same thing with the Bitter Knight. He will cage one random person after about 5 seconds of spawning. And the same thing with the Blood Knight. He will randomly spawn in a location and then do that line mechanic. So everyone needs to pay attention and call out where the Blood Knight is at. And this happens roughly every 20 seconds. During this fight, there will be a red orb in the center of the room. After its explosion, a red blob will spawn, and the off-tank will grab that blob, just stack it on the boss for better cleave. This blob drops a synergy, but to this day, I don't think anyone really understands the mechanic behind it, and all we know is that the person picks it up. They pick up that synergy from the blob, they'll just take a crap ton of damage over time. So it's best not to have a DPS pick that up. Now let's go ahead and talk about the third phase of the fight. The boss will spawn 2 torturers that will spawn in one of the 8 spots up the stairs. What the DPS need to do is when Lord Falgraven hovers in the air, they need to immediately turn around, run up the stairs while shielding up, and turn to look at the boss. The boss will shoot out 2 red mist-like balls to 2 target locations. Follow where the red mists go to kill the torturers. Now, if the DPS do not kill the torturers in time, they should let you know as the tanks that they did not kill the torturers. What will happen next is that they will spawn, the torturers will spawn in the group roughly about 10 to 15 seconds later. The off tank at this time will grab those torturers and stack them on the boss for better cleave. The torturers do 2 attacks. One teleport strike to about 6 players, and then a heavy attack that looks just like the uppercut. You may hold block through those attacks and you should be fine, but again, if you want to dodge roll and avoid these attacks, you may. Remember that the off tank needs to have guard in this fight to guard the main tank. Well, that covers all the ads that spawn in this fight, so let's go ahead and talk about Lord Falgraven and his mechanics for each phase and what to expect. Keep in mind that if you remember watching the last clip that was just showed, Lord Falgraven on the 3rd phase was very tall, very big. He is like that throughout the entire fight, so they count as that is the size that they count throughout the entire fight. So they're really that huge. Their hitbox is really big. I know it may look like he's smaller at the start, but trust me, his range is very large, and he's very large in himself. So Here's some basic attacks that he does. Light attacks. His light attacks apply a poison damage, which is a damage over time that lasts about 20 seconds. There's no point in even trying to worry about that because it doesn't really do that much damage to you as long as you're in heals, and it gets reapplied every light attack anyways. The next attack he does is a heavy attack, which he moves his arms backward, leaning his chest forward, and then he goes to claw you. This looks like the heavy attack from the werewolf. Just dodge roll it if you're not comfortable taking the hit, or if you're not guarded or you don't have enough health, just dodge roll it. The next attack he will do shortly after this is a huge lightning AoE attack that will go to 6 random players called Instability. The DPS, the off tank, and the healers will all get it. I've personally, as a main tank, have never gotten it. All you need to do is just spread out, not to overlap the circles of the AoE. If you do, it can potentially kill the healers and DPS if you do that. The next important mechanic that will happen at about 90% of Lord Falgraven's health is what he'll do is he'll do a chain lightning attack to the pillar in the wall. There's 4 pillars in the wall, 1 on each corner. What the group must do is line up from the pillar on the wall to the boss. The boss will lift his hand up in the air and chain lightning to whatever pillar you need to go to as a group. This needs to happen 4 times, and you could tell where to go because of the chain lightning from the boss to the wall. Everything else is pretty much repeats itself. At 80%, the same chain lightning mechanic will happen again, so be sure to line up and connect the lightning as fast as possible. At 70%, the boss will break the floor, and your group will proceed to the second phase of the fight. I'm going to let the rest of this fight play out until we get to the second phase of the fight, just so you can kind of see this in real time and see how we make the certain call outs in this fight. Hands.
Keep moving, guys. Aries and John.
Spreading out.
Guess I have to block that maybe.
I can't res. I'm gonna keep guarding John.
Yeah, I should have done
Spreading out.
He's dead. Maybe I will just hold till after this phase. After this phase, it'll be
Spreading out.
Midnight and John. Straight back. Left. Straight through. Right, last one. Right, Midnight and John.
Spreading out.
We're gonna hold ults for downstairs now, so we can nuke. Once they're all stacked, if you have a Destro, just fucking rip it. Except for the Colossus people, please.
Spreading out. We're going down 1%. Going down now.
It'll be Michael and Singh. Going to the Crimson, stay in the group, don't get too far away. Prison. Midnight Nasty. prison. Prison, and then on the mini.
He's enraging.
Just stay on him now. Watch out for the line.
After killing the 3 ads on the second phase of the fight, what you want to do as the main tank is stand slightly in the center of the room. You don't want to stand exactly in the center of the room, as there will be a giant red orb that spawns and will do damage to any player close to it. This may not kill you as the tank, but it will definitely nuke a DPS or a healer very quickly. Notice where I'm standing in the room. You notice the circle and then the symbol. I'm standing halfway in between the center of the room and the outline of the circle. That way the boss is directly on top of the red orb. So this way the boss is basically in the center of the room. Now once the red orb spawns, what's going to happen is these red blobs will spawn very far away from the orb, and there'll be a lot of them that start to spawn quite a bit. This lasts about 30 seconds. The blobs will make their way to the red orb, and if they make it to the red orb, what will happen is that blob will get absorbed to the red orb and deal damage based on how many it absorbs. The more blobs the red orb absorbs, the bigger the red orb will get. It will then explode and then deal damage based on that. These mechanics are basically repeated up until about 35%. Again, I'm going to let the comms go ahead and take over of this fight so that you guys can kind of hear what we're calling out and what's going on. And then I will come back at the third phase once we hit 35%.
Instability. Nasty. Ready for Blood Knight.
Through the center of the group. Right through us.
Watch out, weights and Aries. Look back behind you. Oof. Instability. John, Michael, as soon as you can. Ready for prison, same thing as last time. Hemorrhage, okay. Prison, right side. I'm getting Michael. John, you won't be guarded. Midnight's at the back of the boss as soon as you can get him, please. Aries, Sing.
People should get ready to shield in 5 seconds.
Ika in 3, 2, shield. Shield again for instability. Prison on Sarge. Someone get Midnight? Yep.
Yeah, he's got him.
Shield up, instability. John, Midnight. He's to the back left. Take a look at him. Move as required, please.
Right through Jay.
Good call. 8%. Nasty. Shield up. Hemorrhage, 4%. Last instability.
Going down.
Spread out, buff up, let John grab.
All right, so we reached the third and final phase of the fight. This is the 35% part. Once you fall down, look up in the air and you can see Lord Falgraven flying down towards you. You may taunt him in the air. Once he lands, be sure to be holding block, as his light attacks can do a crap ton of damage. If you notice the room To the left and right of you, depending on which way you're looking, there's 2 sets of stairs. And at the top of the stairs, there's a blood-like mist surrounding the upper part. This is where the torturers are. Notice how I position the boss in one spot. When he goes to heavy attack me, I dodge roll away from the group and in one particular spot. Almost messed that word up. Anyways, I dodge roll in one particular spot. When the boss heavy attacks you, you want to make sure you dodge roll it, as it will do a ridiculous amount of damage. He then will leave behind a small AoE. It's the size roughly of about 3 meters or so. This AoE will do a crap ton of damage if you stay inside of it. So make sure that you dodge roll out of the AoE, or if you're dodge rolling into that one spot, make sure that you get out of it kind of quickly. This boss will then hover in the air, clearing the air of the blood mist on the upper part of the room. That's when the DPS need to go up, find the torturers, kill them, and then come back down and continue DPSing the boss. The only attacks that Lord Falgraven does in Phase 3 are the light attack and the heavy attacks that leave behind the small AoE, and then of course the hover mechanic. I guess you could count that as an attack. These mechanics are repeated up until about roughly 10 to 15%. I'm not really sure on the percentage, as we have a lot of DPS, so it's hard to kind of guesstimate when that actually is. Once the boss hits about 15% or so, he will no longer hover in the air. At this point, you want the DPS to burn the boss as soon as possible, as quick as possible. The off tank will guard you during this part, or at least should. And if you, as the main tank, need to regain stam, call a swap with the off tank, kind of like how you did with Cloud Rest or something like that. So that way the off tank can grab the boss and you have time to heavy attack if you get caught in a tight pinch there. The longer you are in this fight, the harder the damage over time hits. There's a constant dot once you hit Phase 3 or the third and final platform that is constantly ticking on you. So the longer you're in there, the longer the damage is continuously hitting you. Again, be sure to read the description, as I have some tips written out. I hope this video helps you and your group complete this on hard mode. Be sure to like and subscribe, and have a good one. We'll see you in the next video. Again, I will let the rest of this video play out so you can hear us talk about what mechanics are going on and just kind of hear our raid lead talk.
Ares, sing as soon as you can. John, as soon as you can. Midnight, hold yours. Go, last time. Midnight, nasty.
Stack up a little bit better if you can.
Good job.